We're living in interesting times. Feminism is a big thing right now. Everybody, or almost everybody, at least it feels that way. Like everybody's talking about feminism. Everybody's a feminist now. I remember since the Barbie movie came out last year, that I think that's what got everybody speaking about feminism. And recently, we just had a very consequential presidential election here in the United States about 2 weeks ago. Um, as I'm recording this video, we are right now, it's mid-November, so Donald Trump won the elections. And for many, many people, this election period process was very important to address the issue of inequalities. For many, many people saw this election process as a way of righting some wrongs in our country. And they considered that women's rights were at stake. Okay, so once again, that triggered the same feminist arguments, ideas, and that sort of thing. So these are interesting times, and to me, it's been a little bit of an issue since I would say since the movie came out, the Barbie movie, an issue to speak and to teach about feminist philosophy, specifically the feminist ethics, which is what I teach in my ethics class. It's been a little bit of a problem now because I've noticed in the eyes of many of my students some suspicion, and I'm talking about my female students. And I've received a lot of criticism and objections from these female students about my presentation of the feminist ethics, and and I get it. I really do. Uh, for many feminist philosophers, I am part of the problem. I am a man. I identify as a man, male, and therefore it's not only suspicious, but it's just inappropriate to have a man talking or teaching about feminist ethics. Because if you think about it, it's almost like having a white man, a white professor, teaching about African American studies and speaking about the experience of being an African American in the United States. Like, really? A white guy? So I totally understand. I really do. And so I had my doubts about putting together this video. I struggled a little bit, but I got over it. I got over it. I was I realized that I am qualified to teach and to talk about feminist philosophy and feminist ethics for two simple reasons. Number one, I have a brain. I can I can distinguish between a good idea and a bad idea, like I really can. I can understand problems, and for many years I have ventured opinions, observations about things, and people have found my observations and opinions reasonable or valid. So I think I can do it, right? That's one reason why I feel qualified to talk about feminist ethics. The other reason is because I am a professional philosopher. Okay, I've been trained in analyzing very complex arguments, ideas, philosophy books. I know how to make connections between ideas with other ideas and philosophers and so on, and to analyze, assess arguments and extract some conclusion, draw some important valid conclusions from all this analyzing. So I have the expertise and the experience, and that's why I believe I am qualified to speak about feminist philosophy, more particularly feminist ethics. So, in case you were wondering, you, my viewer, what is this dude doing? He's a guy speaking about feminist philosophy, really? Well, those are my reasons. Now, having said that, let's begin talking about the feminist ethics. And let's start with Carol Gilligan. Born 1936, is an American psychologist who wrote one of the most important books of the 20th century, in my estimation, In a Different Voice. This book not only challenged traditional conceptions of psychology and human development, but provided the philosophical foundation for the feminist ethics, also known as the ethics of care. Now, we can safely say that it was Carol Gilligan who got the ball rolling. Okay, she started with this idea in the book, this thesis, let's say, that women do not understand, do not experience the world the same way men do. And therefore, they don't experience, they don't process morality, moral issues the same way men do. And she says that there's values that they are so ingrained in the woman's way of thinking that it's just very characteristics of women to have a distinctive approach to moral situations. Okay, I'm going to give you an example here. Okay, a real example, real life example. About 7 years ago, I was going to one of my ethics classes, right? And I was early. It was like 30 minutes before the class started. And I thought the classroom was unoccupied. There was nobody. The lights were off. So I opened the door, and to my surprise, I see a student sitting in the middle of the classroom, female student, crying, covering her face with both her hands, and crying like invisible distress. And boy, I did not expect that. And so I was totally taken aback, and I did not know what to do, friends, like honestly. And gosh, I started thinking about what should I do, and then I started thinking, okay, this young woman is going through something very obviously very heavy and personal. So because it's personal, I'm going to give her some space. I'm going to respect whatever it is that she's going through, and I'm just going to leave her alone. So I pretended like she wasn't there, and I tiptoed my way to the computer, and I started working on my PowerPoint, preparing my lecture. And then another female student opened the door of the classroom, and she saw this first student crying in the middle of the classroom, and she immediately ran up to her, and she was like, "Hey, what's going on, honey? Are you okay? What's happening?" And I saw her reaction, and she was so full of care and love and compassion, and I felt like a criminal. I felt so bad because I thought I could have done something like that, right? I could have shown more care, right? And gosh, but I share this experience with my students in class, and I ask my male students, I say, okay, how many of you male students would have reacted, would have done something like I did? Would have thought, okay, the right thing to do here in this situation is to give the students some space. How many of you would have done that? And I gotta say, most of my male students, they raise their hand. But then I asked the question to my female students. Now, I said, okay, ladies, how many of you would have done something like the second student did? And most, if not all of them, they raised their hand. And I say, well, there you go. There you go. So same scenario, and we're going to have two different reactions depending on whether you're a man or a woman. And that's kind of like what Carol Gilligan was trying to make evident to everybody. Now, here's an accusation. Here's an objection that I get from my female students. I've been getting, like I said, for the past year and a half. Oh, Mr. Molina, that is so sexist of you to say, for you to say. And I say, what's sexist? Oh, that men and women, they're different and they react differently to the same scenario. And, Mr. Molina, men and women are the same and they have the same value and blah, blah, blah. And I say, okay, I said very respectfully, I said, listen, this is not me. It's not what I'm telling here, what I'm sharing with you about Carol Gilligan, it's not something that I made up. This is what Carol Gilligan actually believes and most feminist philosophers. I'm not making this stuff up. Like, you can look it up if you don't believe me. Do your own research and you're going to find out that what I'm sharing here is factual. So, okay, so and here I have to make this very, very clear. Friends, I am very much aware of the difference between an opinion and a fact. Okay, I'm very much aware. Some people don't have that distinction very clear, but I do. And every time in my classes, make very clear to my students, okay, when I present information, I say, okay, this is the information. Now, this is what I believe. And so here's my opinion. Now, with my opinion, I mean, you're more than welcome to disagree. You don't have to take it, believe it, my opinion. But I always make that distinction, right? So this stuff about Carol Gilligan is factual. So, okay, I'm not being sexist. Okay, but that's normally an objection that I've been encountering recently. So that's it. That got the ball rolling. Women experience the world differently. And why? What is exactly different in the way women experience the world? Well, women have these values ingrained in their thinking. Okay, now here. This is generally speaking. I have to make this clear. Generally speaking. There's always exceptions, always. But the exception is not the rule. The rule is most women, when they receive information from the world, especially about relationships, about issues, moral issues, they filter that information through these values that are very much ingrained in their thinking. Values that feminist philosophers call care values. Care values. Love, compassion, care, trust, family, friends. These are the kind of things that are very, very supremely important for women, for most women. And this is how they process morality and how they understand morality and how they go about the world, actually. So, but with men, it's not the same. It's not the same thing. So I use that example, and I think it illustrates this difference, right, in approach from women to between men and women regarding the same scenario, the same moral situation. How to react, how to respond to a woman who is crying and she's in visible distress. So, so that's it. That's the beginning idea. Now, where do we go from here? Let's go to the next slide. Okay. Many feminist philosophers following Gilligan, they believe that a proper understanding of morality requires care values, again, love, trust, compassion, family, etc., to be taken into account as much as values traditionally advanced by male thinkers. Equality, reason, utility, autonomy, virtue, impartiality. Okay, so it's interesting. I teach ethics, right? And the way I teach ethics in my classes is I teach moral theories or accounts of morality, explanations of morality from philosophers. And the way I do it is chronologically. Like, I begin with the very first account of morality, that is virtue ethics, from Aristotle. And then we talk about natural law. And then we talk about the ontology and then utilitarianism and so on. So when we get to this point where we talk about the feminist ethics, my students are very aware that all the main ideas that we consider before from previous philosophers, male philosophers, their fundamental ideas or principles were things like that, like equality, reason, utility, virtue, autonomy. And the complaint from feminist philosophers now is that that does not that is a very inadequate approach to morality because it totally neglects care values. And it is with the care values that women experience and understand morality. So we've been given a very, let's say, low resolution way of looking and understanding morality. Now, if we incorporate these care values, okay, we're going to get a much better picture and a much more fair, let's say, picture, especially regarding women. So, so that's an idea. Interestingly, it is virtually impossible to think of a moral scenario where care values do not play an important role. Friends, this is a great point made by feminist philosophers, like a great, great point. It's true. If you think about it, every time we encounter a moral choice, or we see any situation, two people having an issue, it is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to not consider what we feel. Like our feelings are involved, right, in the way we handle the situation. We understand what's going on. And to their credit, I have to say, to feminist philosophers, because they brought this to the forefront, to our attention, care values. It's incredible that just till the mid 20th century, we realized, gosh, we had this major hole in our perception of morality. We were totally forgetting the experience, the role that feelings and these values, family, compassion, the role they play in morality. So really, really, really good point by feminist philosophers. So definitely, yes, we need to incorporate all these things so we have a much better high resolution understanding and view of morality. So great, great point. This issue has led many feminist philosophers to question all moral ideas traditionally considered fundamental by male thinkers. A case in point is autonomy or freedom. Okay, so this is where things get really, really interesting. Okay, so the argument or the complaint is something like, okay, now that we've opened our eyes to this aspect of morality that the philosophers, male philosophers, have been neglecting for centuries, okay, we need to reconsider all these theories and all these ideas that are that philosophers in the past, well, made popular, and and this idea of autonomy and how questionable it is now that we are using and validating the woman's perspective. Autonomy is a problem. Why? So here's the argument some feminist philosophers make. Okay, women do not enjoy the same degree of autonomy or freedom than men do. So yeah, it is easier for men to speak about autonomy and to use autonomy to build their philosophical system, their institutions. We'll talk more about that. But they have used autonomy as a major thing, as a fundamental idea. But there's a flaw with autonomy. Women don't enjoy the same degree of autonomy. What do you mean? Women are as free as men. True, there's some societies where women are deprived of some important values, but I'm talking about now in the United States at least. Women don't have the same level or degree of freedom. Why? Well, here's the argument. Women sometimes feel pushed to pursue some careers and some occupations that they probably don't want to do, but they are pushed that way by our society. So that's why we have so many female educators. Let's say that's a typical career for a woman, right? Being an educator, or we have nursing, right? Another career that um, women enjoy when women pursue. Let's say, and about education, gosh, I remember in community colleges, it's not the difference between the proportion of male and female instructors is not as noticeable, let's say, as in public schools. I used to work at this elementary school not too long ago, and I used to be a Spanish teacher at an elementary school. It was really a lot of fun. But anyways, in this school we had about 60 people working at the school, uh, administrators, teachers, volunteers, janitors, like everybody, probably about 60 people, and only four men. I was one of them. Four men. So, gosh, I mean, the imbalance and the disproportion in the number of male to females, right, educator, it's very, very evident. I'm not saying it's problematic. It wasn't a problem for me, but it can be a problem for women if the environment is one of, let's say, technology or business, or what's the other environment? Technology, business, science, maybe. Okay, then engineering. That's the one that was escaping me. Okay, in these environments, we have a disproportionate number of men over women. My wife, as a matter of fact, she's an electrical engineer. Boy, she tells me all sorts of stories and how difficult it was for her in school. I mean, in a class of, let's say, 28 students, there were only two women or three, and many men were really nice, really polite to the women, but others, man, they were nasty. And in a male-dominated environment can be brutally competitive. So it's not a pleasant, easy environment for a woman. So there you go. There you go. The argument is women don't feel motivated, encouraged to pursue this kind of professions, engineering, technology, because of the environment. So they're more encouraged to, choose a different career path. But here's the problem with the career path: the male-dominated careers, they're the ones who you make a lot of money in, a lot of money. Those are the ones who are really, really profitable. But of course, they are dominated by men, which is why it's no surprise that most rich people, powerful people, CEOs and so on, they're men. Okay, does that make sense? So yeah, women, you would think women can choose this any career they want, but it's not that easy for a woman. It is not. So, in another argument, and probably this is more relatable for you. Maybe you know a story or two about this situation. Um, I had these friends many years ago when I used to live in Florida. A married couple. They were in their mid 30s and they had three children, young children. And the man used to work for this corporation, and he was offered a position, right? A big position with a big raise. But it required him to move out of Florida to go to another state. So, but I mean, the benefits were like unbelievable. He was going to be making like double the money he was making in Florida. I remember it was something like he was making like $70,000 in Florida, and the new position was like 110. So for him, it was a no-brainer. He was like, okay, honey, we're moving, we're leaving Florida. But for her, for the woman, the wife, it was a really, really hard decision to make, because obviously she was really concerned about the kids and the family. So I remember once I was there with my ex-wife, and we were talking with them about this issue. We were trying to help and listen to them speaking, and how and find a way of dealing, finding a solution to their drama. It was a big drama. And she said something like, the wife said something like, honey, our kids, they have their friends here, they were born here, all their friends are here, they love their teachers, they love their school, and their grandparents are here. And so for her, it was obviously the wrong thing to do, to move out of Florida. It was wrong. But for him, it was the right thing to do. So there you go. Okay, another example that illustrates the same idea that women process morality differently. They have different values, different priorities. So for the wife, family first. For the man, money first. Now, how does this relate to the issue of autonomy? Okay, very simply, this is the argument, another argument feminists make. It is easier for a man to move up professionally and be more successful than it is for a woman. So don't say, it is as easy for a woman as for a man to make money. That is not true. That is absolutely not true. Because if a woman has to choose between a great job and sacrificing her children or quality time with her children in the process, they're going to prioritize the children, the family. In most cases, there's always exceptions, always exceptions. But I've heard so many, I gotta say, unfortunately, many women making this complaint. They would say, gosh, I would love to go back to school and finish my career, but I can't because I have to be a mom. So there you go. It might seem like, oh, they're free. Women can do whatever in this country. They can pursue whatever they want. Well, it's not true. That is not true. They don't have the same freedom. They don't. And you might argue, well, that's their choice. Their choice is family over career. So, well, like I said, it doesn't feel that way for some women who they want to move up professionally. They want to go to school. They want to finish their career, but they feel they can't. So there's that limitation. And if it's not kids, maybe it's a relative, it's a father or elderly mother who needs to be taken care of, and she's not going to leave mom behind for simply pursuing a great job somewhere else. That's not as easy for a woman as it is for a man, unfortunately. So what does that mean? That men don't care about their family? In the conversation with this couple, I remember the guy said, well, we're going to be in touch with our parents. We can video call them every day. Obviously, it's not the same thing, right? So there you go. Yes. Apparently, men and women enjoy the same freedoms, but they don't. They don't feel as free. Hmm. What do you think? Post a comment. If you have something to say, I would love to read your comments. So let's go to the next slide. According to American feminist philosopher Hill Lindemann, born 1947, sentimental relationships embody a power dynamic that is detrimental for women, considering they are naturally more caring, loving, and trusting than men, which makes women an easy target for emotional harm and abuse. So, quite a way of looking at relationships as power dynamics. Lindemann says something really thought-provoking, to say the least. In one of her writings, she says that when you love somebody or you trust somebody, you put yourself under that person's power. Because in the end, for her, sentimental relationships are all about power fundamentally. So when you love somebody, you become their slave of some sort. And that person has power over you. And wow, gosh, I mean, who would like to have a sentimental relationship, right? With that idea in mind. So, okay, to me, and this is opinion, welcome to disagree. I think that this is a very, very, how can I say, oversimplistic and inadequate way of looking at sentimental relationships. There's so much goodness in sentimental relationships. I'm very much aware of the negatives and the risks because, having a sentimental relationship with somebody involves risks, obviously. But I'm also aware of the positives, and like having somebody with you in difficult times somebody who encourages you, or somebody who just listens to you. That's tremendously comforting and inspiring sometimes. I mean, I can speak for hours about my wife and how amazing she is. So I don't regret for a second. And but I don't see, you see, I also don't see any power dynamic going on. And I have had this conversation with my wife just to make sure that I'm not, fooling myself thinking that there's no power when there is. So I have asked her this question, and we have had this conversation. But I feel it though. I feel it in her that she trusts me, that she's comfortable with me, that she feels loved, and that sort of thing. So it's true. Okay, there's some influence in a sentimental relationship. The person you love is going to have some influence on you, and obviously, again, I'm aware of the risks and the problems in sentimental relationships, but they're not all about power fundamentally. Um, but okay, you're welcome to disagree. The argument, though, you see, borrows from this initial idea that because women are more naturally inclined to trust and to care and to open up, they make themselves more vulnerable. They're naturally more vulnerable. And they're more open to this kind of wrongs, to be deceived, to be betrayed, to be emotionally neglected, abused. And that is wrong. And Lindemann says that, okay, that the only way, the only effective way to address and to avoid these things from happening is to get rid of the idea of gender, because it is gender is the root cause of these types of wrongs. She says some very interesting things about gender, so let's read some of those things. Lindemann writes, relations of power set the terms for who must answer to who has authority over whom, and who gets excluded from certain kinds of accountability to whom. Many of these power relations are illegitimate in that they're instances of gender. Okay, this is her, right? I'm quoting her. And here's another quote. Gender operates through social institutions like marriage and the law, in practices like education and medicine, by disproportionately conferring entitlements and the control of resources on men, while disproportionately assigning women to subordinate positions in the service of man's interests. So, gender is the problem, according to Lindemann. It is because of this binary distinction that we make between men and women and male or female, that women, a group of people, women, right, end up being disadvantaged in our society. Why? Because, and here's another argument from feminist philosopher, because our systems, our government, our laws were made by men. So, with their narrow way of looking, understanding what's right and wrong, understanding morality and justice, this values of equality and rationality, virtue, and all those things, they created these systems in which obviously men thrive, but women not so much. So women don't get to enjoy the same opportunities, the same resources, and so on. So I mentioned it already, right? Most CEOs, the most richest people in the United States by far are men, right? Men occupied most positions of power. And so there you go. Why? Because for Lindemann and friends, I hope you see that this is a philosophical analysis, right? Because she's trying to understand, okay, fundamentally, what is the idea? What is the belief that we've been relying on, that produced all these inequalities and all these institutions? Okay, it's gender. If we keep put people in the box of female, then we're going to, those people are going to be disadvantaged. So we have to get rid of gender. Gender is an idea that needs to go. So, interesting. So, and how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, at least feminist philosophers were able to identify the problem. And one thing they try to do, and this was like in the 80s and 90s, I remember the media try to promote the idea of encouraging boys to play with dolls, okay, to play with girl toys, and encouraging girls to play with boy toys, like, action figures and toy guns and that sort of thing. And along with that, encouraging boys to wear skirts and pink color clothes, and for girls the same thing, encouraging them to wear blue and then pants and that sort of thing. So in the end, friends, these attempts proved to be fruitless. Um, Girls continue preferring playing with girl toys, and boys playing with boy toys. So it didn't work, but that was the plan. The plan was to make this gender distinctions, and especially the expectations. Oh, you're female, okay, then you're supposed to do this, and you're not supposed to do these other things. You're male, you're boy, okay, then you're supposed to play with these toys, and you're not supposed to wear these clothes, and so on. So that was the idea. It was an effort to um, uh, get rid of this way of thinking, and having expectations, stereotypes, and what is the word I'm looking for? Um, yeah, expectations. The word flew out of my head for now. Gender roles. Okay, that's what I was trying to remember. Gender roles. If we if we encourage, I have to say, to boys and girls to not pay attention to these gender roles and these stereotypes and these expectations, okay, we're going to be better off. We're going to have a much fair society for everybody, especially for women. That didn't work. What what did work? What did work was, I think it worked. Um, a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago now, the media started pushing this idea of people having different gender identities. Some people did not fit the binary. So they started talking about, yeah, well, some people are non-binary. Okay. And then, so and that's a gender identity, being non-binary. People who don't fit the male, female box. And then somebody else said, okay, but there's other identities. It's not like there's three now, like male, female, non-binary. There's also other gender expressions, identities, and I have to say, friends, last time I checked, there were 30 something gender identities recognized by some people, right? Or perhaps most people. Perhaps for some of you watching, you're still thinking, well, there's just two, male and female. But okay, look it up and see what you find in Google. How many gender identities are out there? Last time I checked, again, 30 something. And I know that I'm aware, at least they're trying to keep adding more gender identities to the list. With what idea? With the idea of, this is arguably, this is my opinion, with the idea of making the binary male female irrelevant. Irrelevant. If we have most people on board with the idea that there's multiple gender identities, that you don't have, it's not either or, it's not either male or female, but there's a whole range of different gender identities, then in the future, in the near future, if you say you're male, that's going to be unimportant. Like, who cares? Okay, you're male, I'm female, and he's Y, and she's Z, and this person is X, and who cares? That it's not important anymore. Um, and with this idea, right, with having multiple gender identities, people will feel freer. At least they won't feel constrained of, gosh, thinking I cannot pursue that career because I'm a male, or I shouldn't pursue that because I'm a female. No, who cares? You are free. You can adopt or create your own gender identity, and then live your life your way, and don't feel limited or constrained in your choices and your aspirations, your goals, your dreams. So you see what I'm saying? Without this, by making the binary irrelevant, we accomplish the same goal, right? More fairness to people and more freedom. That is the argument. So I don't know. I wonder, once again, I wonder what you think about that idea. So, in my estimation, my opinion, okay, that sort of, or probably it's too soon to tell. It's too soon to tell. Maybe in 10, 15 years, we'll see if how irrelevant the binary male female becomes, and we'll see if people with other non-traditional non-binary way of looking understanding their sexual identity, we'll see if those people end up being better off professionally or in other regards. We'll see. That is yet to be seen. But I think it's a much more effective strategy, my opinion. It's much more effective. Rather than making people forget about the binary distinction, add more gender identities, and that will make the distinction irrelevant. Okay. Schaefer Landau, American philosopher, is right when he says it is important to understand how much of what goes in society depends on domestic work being well done. Children fed and well raised, house and household well maintained. Society is possible only if there are people devoted to caring for others. That's such a great point, and another great point by feminist philosophers, because not that Schaefer Landau is a feminist philosopher, he's a textbook author, and in this chapter in the Fundamentals of Ethics, he's describing, talking about feminist ethics. So this is an argument that feminist philosophers make, and it's so true, like it's, I mean, unquestionably true. We, none of us would be here without at least one caring parent. None of us would be here. We would have no society without caring individuals. Boy, what a realization. And our system, our institutions, our understanding of justice and morality have completely neglected care values. How important it is love, family, compassion, trust, friendship, and so on. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. All our world is built on the same traditional male ideas of rationality, virtue, and all the other ones, autonomy, and so on. So, great point. These feminist concerns, women's restricted autonomy, their disadvantage in sentimental relationships produced by gender, and their importance in society as caregivers, have inspired feminist thinkers to take a more activist role, pushing for legal and political reforms in our country. Obviously, obvious. Okay, once you're able to identify the problem, the next thing is to fix the problem. Okay, so that's why for many people, philosophy and activism goes hand in hand. I'm not 100% sure about that or about what is meant by activism. I do believe that philosophy and a better understanding of ethics can make you a better person, and in that way or in that sense, you can actually make this world a better world by being a better person and helping others, right? But activism, okay, it's a different deal. But feminist philosophers tend to be very politically active, let's say. Such reforms naturally begin in a philosophical arena. The feminist rejection of the private-public distinction is a case in point. Friends, the first time I read about this issue, I thought it was insane. Like, honestly, insane. What's the issue? Okay, here's the issue. For feminist philosophers, for many, something that it's harmful for women is privacy. Privacy is harmful for women. The idea of separating between the public and the private spheres, right? This distinction male thinkers have made and politicians, it's again, it's detrimental for women. Why? Because most of the abuse that women suffer from is protected, let's say, is not addressed because they are considered private issues, things that occurred in the private sphere. So the government has nothing to say about that. The system of justice has nothing to say about this type of harms and moral crimes, let's say. What types of moral crimes are you talking about, Mr. Molina? Well, um, wrongs that are committed in the sphere of sentimental relationships and family life. Okay, when something is wrong, when there's instances of abuse, violations of trust in one of these two spheres, the sentimental relationships and family life, okay, normally those things are considered private, personal things, right? Well, and because they're personal, okay, the government, the system of justice should have nothing to say about that type of harm. Wait a minute, but that's contradictory. If it's wrong and we know it's wrong, something must be done about it. And this is the position that feminist philosophers take. For example, if you know, and everybody knows, or most people, that emotional abuse, neglect is wrong, then something must be done. These issues must be addressed by our system of justice. They haven't been addressed because, right, the systems were built by men with no regard for care values. But we need to incorporate these care values into our system, into our laws, care values. Okay, we need to use them, incorporate them, and that way we'll address some of these injustices. And one of the first things we're going to realize is that privacy, this idea of privacy, things being personal, they're wrong and they're harmful to women who suffer, right, more in these spheres, sentimental relationships, family life. So there's a famous statement by a feminist philosopher. Gosh, I forgot to look it up, but the statement is quite famous, and the statement is the personal is political. And the statement basically says these things that you call personal and private, this types of wrong emotional abuse, it's not personal, it's political. The personal is political. Don't make this distinction between private, public, and what is personal and what is non-personal or social or whatever or legal. Don't give me this distinction, this line. The personal is political. These issues must be addressed by our system of laws and government and so on. Boy, so that's an idea. Okay, I'm going to give you in the next slide an example of the type of legislation that tries to address this sort of issues that we consider private, and in an attempt to incorporate care values into our laws. Okay, you ready? Let's go. Troy Singleton's law proposal, sexual assault by fraud. Troy Singleton is a New Jersey legislator. To this day, I believe, I know for a fact that he continues to this day pushing for this kind of legislation. Take a look at the proposal. This was I don't know, about 8 years ago. I found it in the news and I thought it was incredibly interesting and very important example for feminist ethics, right? For my lecture. And sexual assault by fraud, gosh, that sounds pretty criminal, don't you think? And it was just a proposal, never became an actual law. But I'm going to tell you what kind of wrong this law proposal tried to address. Okay, and here it is. Let's say a man and a woman start dating, and and let's say the man lies about his income. Like he says he makes a lot of money and it's not true. But she believes him, and later in the relationship, they end up having sex. And then later she discovers that he's been lying about his income and she feels betrayed, emotionally crushed, abused, right? Well, according to this legislation, she should be able to take this man to the authorities or go to the authorities and denounce this man and have him pay a fine or maybe have him behind bars. Like I don't remember the exact details of the law proposal, but it was something like that, something serious. Like we have to make this a criminal offense, right? Why? Because it's a violation of trust. Violation of trust. Remember, that's one of the care values. If we're going to incorporate them into our system of laws, then violations of trust must be punishable. They absolutely must. And this is what this is, an attempt to do that. So, okay, it works both ways, I have to say. If it's the woman doing the line, okay, she should also be dealt with accordingly, according to this proposal. So it's not relevant whether it is a man or a woman doing the lying. Normally it is the man, the guy, doing the lying and exaggerating about, their accomplishments and so on. So, and because we know that it's wrong, because it is, to deceive someone with the idea of taking advantage of her or him, that is wrong. I mean, you ask anybody, they will say that that's not right. Lying to someone to take advantage of the person, that is never morally acceptable. Well, what does our system of justice do about that? Nothing. Nothing. Okay, this is an opportunity, right, to address that, to fix or improve our system of laws. So interesting. Now, I, when I read this about this law, and then I remember reading about the details of the legislation, I immediately thought, gosh, um, this is something that if we get to approve and to establish this kind of legislation, right? If this becomes a law, that can set a very scary precedent for other laws, similar laws. And in my mind, I contemplated two very scary scenarios or places this type of legislation can take us to. Now, um, perhaps this is good, perhaps this is not good, but I am the type of person who, when I hear about an idea, the very first thing that I consider, the first thing that pops into my head is a wrong negative scenario. Like I picture, what if this thing goes seriously wrong? Okay, that's the first thing that comes into my head, right? And and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing or a wise thing. I think it's wise, but you're welcome to disagree. But in my mind, I thought, gosh, I mean, we can end up in two very scary places by allowing this kind of legislation. First place is this will give governments and cities, let's say, the power to regulate everything about our lives. All our relationships can end up being regulated by the government. Like the government will dictate what is appropriate and what is not appropriate to do in a sentimental relationship and even in family life. Like, for example, okay, let's say you have a child in fourth grade, okay, and your child does not know, to this day, does not know how to read, Why? Because you're a very, very busy person and you have two or three jobs, and you just don't have the time to sit with your child every night and read and do homework with your child. And because you don't have the time, then now your child is struggling in school, and not only struggling, but he's being bullied and ridiculed by his peers because he's in fourth grade and still does not know how to read and write. Friends, this is more common than you think. Okay, just saying. This is not a crazy example. This is very, very common. And so there you go. That is not right. That is not right. Neglecting your kids, not taking the time of doing homework with your kids and not reading with your kids and encouraging them to do better, to learn things. Okay, that is wrong. Okay, well, it's wrong. So now what? We're going to have a parent put behind bars for not reading to her child and not spending, I don't know, quality time? Because that's another one, right? If you don't have the time to just take your kids to the playground every day or regularly, I mean, you're gonna be punished for it? Like really? Gosh. So think about it. How much do you like that idea, that scenario? Government pretty much controlling our lives. Like really, they're going to stipulate how many hours a week I should read with my children, and how are they going to enforce that? This question will take us to the other really scary place. Because think about it, how if we had these legislations, how is the government going to enforce them? How is the system of laws, for example, a judge, how is she going to establish guilt? For example, let's say I am that guy who lies about my income, and in this relationship I lied, and then I end up in bed with this person, and the person found out that I was not making that money. The person takes me or denounce me. I can simply say that it's not true. That is not true. I never lied about my income. So it's going to be my word against her word. How is the government or the court, the laws, right, the system, how is it going to determine who is guilty and who is not? Okay, there is one way. There is one way they can do that effectively, and that is once again by getting rid of privacy rights, getting rid of privacy. Because if right now in America, if you record somebody without their knowing, having a conversation with somebody, you're recording their conversation, and they don't know, okay, that's illegal. Okay, that you cannot do that, and obviously you cannot use that in a court of law because it's you're violating someone's right to privacy. Well, what if we don't have that right? Then the person you're dating or anyone for that matter, any conversation that you have with anybody, you might be recorded, and that recording might be used against you in a court of law, right? If there's a violation of trust or emotional neglect, abuse, and so on. So yeah, and okay, maybe that's not such a bad place, bad scenario. Okay, how about having cameras everywhere? Cameras everywhere. How about by everywhere, I mean in every single home having cameras, video recording 24/7. Why? Well, because if there is an instance of neglect in the household, right? If the parent is actually having enough time to read with her children or her child, but she prefers to just watch Netflix, as soon as she get home from work, she just being lazy and she just doesn't do anything, and she lets the kid be in his room. And okay, we can see that, right? We have the video recording evidence, and we can establish easily we can establish guilt. Okay, yes, the mother is guilty of um, neglecting her child and not reading, doing homework with the child. So, okay. But once again, that implies having no privacy. How do you like that idea? I watched a movie a few years ago. Great movie. I mean, it's a really, at least it's really thought provoking. The movie is called The Circle. And Tom Hanks is in the movie, and there's another actress who's quite popular, but her name escapes me. Tom Hanks, The Circle. And this movie is it's like an exploration on this idea of living in a total surveillance society, a society in which there's no privacy. There's just no privacy, and there are cameras everywhere. Well, the story is kind of like this. There is this huge media corporation, right? And they have their headquarters in some part of the United States, but it's a pretty big area, and they have built like a mini city. So everybody who works in the corporation live there, and they have their stores and their restaurants, everything within this city, and they sort of have their own rules. And because it's a media corporation, and because all this idea of having followers and having views and that sort of thing, it's really really important for them. They decide to try this experiment. They say, okay, let's have cameras in every single place in our community, everywhere. Cameras, video recording, and cameras where anyone can use these cameras to see what's going on anywhere in the city. So, for example, if you want to follow your neighbor, and okay, you begin following your neighbor, you can see what your neighbor is doing 24/7. Everything, everything she does, you can just see from your phone, right? So it's the ultimate follower. But she can do the same thing to you and to anybody. Anybody can follow anybody, everybody. Of course, it's impossible to follow everybody 24/7, but you know what I'm saying. And when you're not seeing what they're doing, okay, at least there's a camera recording, video recording everything. And that means everything, everywhere. So there'll be cameras in every home, in every room, in every bathroom. So at some point, I think in the movie, I watched it years ago, and at some point, I think somebody makes, the objects to the idea, says something like, "Hey, but what does that mean? That I'm not going to be able to even poop in private?" And somebody says like, "No, I mean, what's the big deal? I mean, everybody poops. That's a biological thing. Besides, nobody's going to be really interested in seeing you pooping." Well, maybe there's so many perverts around. Who knows? But well, that's sort of the argument. Nobody cares really. I mean, everybody poops. No big deal. So get over it. Get over it. Yeah, you're going to have that camera in your restroom and bathroom and everywhere. So, and what about sex? So if I'm going to have intimacy with my partner, I'm going to be seen also. I can be seen by anybody. Yes, absolutely. Gosh, I don't like that. Well, what's the problem? I mean, that's a natural thing. We're all here because of a sexual encounter, right? By our parents, biological parents. Get over it, man. So, okay. So they decide to try this experiment, and everybody's being watched. So you might be thinking, wow, what's so great about that society? Okay, here's the benefits. Here's some really, really practical benefits. Number one, there'll be very little or no crime. Because obviously, if you're going to commit a crime, if you're going to break into a house, let's say, you're going to be found out because there's cameras everywhere. So you're going to end up in prison immediately. But if you lie also, okay, you won't lie because you'll be found out. So think about that example, right? The law try to address the sexual assault by fraud. If you're dating somebody and you lie about your income, well, that person can look up your life and see where you actually work and how much money you make because there's no privacy. Everybody has access to all the information of the people in the community. Everybody knows how much money you make, everything, everything. Wow, okay. So That's a benefit, right? We won't have cases of betrayals and violations of trust, emotional neglect. We won't have none of that. And there's another thing, another big benefit. And this is something that actually happens in the movie. Um, does it happen? Yes. Yes, the protagonist is a young woman. She, at some point in the movie, she's really, she's distressed for some reason. She's very not happy, and she step out of the house, and it's in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. in the morning, and she goes to this park, but it's dark and there's nobody, right? And there's a lake in the park, and she gets into this boat and start rowing into the lake, and then the boat begins to sink, and now she's in trouble and she's screaming, but there's nobody around, and she begins to drown. But guess what? Helicopters show up, and then a first responder, and she is rescued. And why? Because somebody was watching her, some follower, and the person saw that she was having trouble. They notified the authorities, and she was rescued. So there you go. In the total surveillance society, there'll be very little accidents, or you will definitely decrease the number of accidents. Think, for example, a grandparent, let's say a grandma taking a shower. Imagine if she has an accident, she sleeps and fall in the shower, in the bathtub, and she's unconscious. Okay, now what? Well, because there's a camera there, you're right, somebody can see that, and they can go and rescue your grandmother. So there you go. So that's a beautiful thing, right? A great idea. Yes, having no privacy. When I consider this scenario, when we talk about the movie The Circle in my classes, this actually happened quite recently. We were discussing this experiment, this possibility of, or imagining at least, living in this total surveillance society. This student, female, she raised her hand and she said to me, Mr. Molina, I wouldn't like to live in a place like that. And I said, why not? She said, because we won't have any freedom. And boy, that really struck me. I thought it was a very interesting thing to say. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, no, people would not really, they will not be free really. And so I started playing the devil's advocate, and I said, okay, that's not true. I mean, you can do whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. You're still free. The fact that you're being watched, that doesn't mean that you're not free. But she said to me, no, Mr. Molina, if you think about it, people will not feel free to say what they think, especially about things, about other people, because everybody will have access, right, to everything, your life. They can go back, they can see what you were doing 3 days ago, and then what you said, and so people won't really feel free to speak. And think about, she said, or this was another student who said, what if it's your day off from work and you just want to be lazy? I mean, you just want to like sit on the couch and just do nothing. Um, well, people will, your friends, your followers, they will say, hey, you're wasting a whole day doing nothing, being lazy. You should do something with your life, or you should exercise, or whatever. People will be judging you if they have access to your life 24/7. So you would feel like, gosh, I have a day off. I would like to do nothing, spend the whole day in my bed, but I can't, or I feel like I can't because people are going to judge me. So yeah, I'm gonna go out and walk. That's not real freedom. I mean, if you're feeling like, if you know you're being watched and recorded 24/7, think about the kind of individuals we would become in that kind of society, because that can paralyze somebody, right? I mean, try to picture it, like the whole world watching you, every move. I mean, won't you feel paralyzed? And that's the thing. That's the problem with the total surveillance society, and living in with no privacy. So, okay. So those are the two scary places. One in which the system, the government regulates your life, everything, in your family life, your relationships, and the other one is the lack of privacy. Yeah, there's some benefits, right? Right? There's some benefits. But who knows? Yeah, there won't be any crime, probably. Most likely, I would say. That's a real possibility. But I wonder what you think. Okay, in closing, I wanna offer you, let's say my concluding thoughts about all this information that I have shared with you here. Number one, feminist ethics validates the role of care values, particularly compassion. That's very good, very important to have the care values into, or incorporate the care values into our analysis of justice and morality. However, compassion can also compromise our judgment at the time of determining what the right thing to do is in an objective, satisfactory manner. Okay, compassion is tricky, friends. And it's tricky because not everybody feels the same degree of compassion. Okay, not everybody is equally compassionate. Regarding the same situation, people might feel more compassionate or less compassionate or somewhat compassionate. Let me give you a scenario. Let's say there's somebody caught shoplifting. Okay, a shoplifter. Many of you might think, okay, that it's wrong to do. Shoplifters should, be, be fined, or there should be some sort of penalty for shoplifter or for shoplifting. But some of you might be thinking, gosh, but what kind of shoplifting? Tell us more about the shoplifter. Okay. Well, I'll give you some details. The shoplifter is an elderly woman. Elderly woman. Wow. Yes, and she is a woman of color. Oh, oh boy. And she's poor, like visibly poor. Oh, okay. Well, what should we do in this case? Okay, we caught this shoplifter, elderly woman. How elderly? She's 80 years old. Oh boy, 80-year-old woman, woman of color, poor, shoplifting. Gosh, maybe we should cut her a break because you would feel compassionate towards somebody like that, right? This is the problem with adding more nuance, let's say, to the analysis of morality and justice. When we start paying attention to these details, okay, and we start appealing to compassion, we might get into a place like that where we think originally we might think, yeah, shoplifting is wrong, but in the end we go like, well, maybe it's not wrong in this case. Maybe for this woman, she is in need, and poor woman, she's struggling, she's old, maybe she doesn't know what she's doing, blah 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 blah. No, she shouldn't go to prison or pay for what she's doing. Okay, whoa, okay. But you see, other people might think otherwise. They might think, no, shoplifting is wrong, and she has to pay some fine or penalty. So, okay, who's right? Who's right? Number two, feminist ethics makes our attachment to family and friends relevant regarding morality and law and justice. So that's something important now to take into consideration relationship to friends, family. But this perspective can easily lead to nepotism and corruption. Feminist ethics doesn't seem to be impartial. Yes, because if we are prioritizing family, right, like women do, if we're incorporating that value into the system, into our understanding of what's right, wrong, and what is just, gosh, then I'm always going to favor family and friends. So if the shoplifter is my grandmother, obviously I'm going to say, wait, she should not pay any fine. She's a poor old lady, and she doesn't deserve to pay a penalty for what she's doing. She doesn't know what she's doing, and it's my grandmother, right? So if I work in a HR department and I'm in charge of hiring, okay, and I have, let's say, 20 applicants with good resumes, but one of the applicants is my nephew. I love my nephew. Okay, I will be justified morally in choosing my nephew over everybody else. The other people might be like more qualified, but it doesn't matter. I'm not looking at qualifications. It's my family member, and that's it. He's going to get the position. Wow. And I'll be morally and legally justified if the care value of family is incorporated into our laws. There's no problem there. And poof, I can give you more scenarios. Having a relative at my daughter in one of my classes, right? I mean, of course, I'm going to give her an A. It's my daughter. I'm going to give her more opportunities to get an A, or extra credit, whatever it takes, because it's my daughter. So everybody else, they're not going to get the same opportunities, but my daughter will. You see what I mean by nepotism and corruption? You know, when in my classes, one of the things that we consider in my ethics class is the trolley dilemma. You're probably familiar with the trolley dilemma. And it's sort of a crazy hypothetical scenario in which you have to choose between either saving one person or saving five people. But here's the thing, right? If you save one person, you're going to sacrifice the other five. You're going to let the other five die. And if you save the five, you're going to let the one person die. And when I present the scenario to my students, while teaching utilitarianism, one of those moral theories made by men, right? John Stuart Mill, Jeremy Bentham. And because it's so rational, their approach to morality, it's basically numbers, right? Numbers is very important in their understanding of morality. So if you're in this scenario, in this dilemma, okay, I'm going to save, what should I do? Save five and sacrifice one, or save one and sacrifice five? Okay, utilitarianism would say, the right thing to do is you sacrifice one to save five. That's the right thing to do. My students get it. They say, yeah, absolutely, that's the right thing to do according to this theory, utilitarianism. But then I ask them, when we're at this point in the Feminist Ethics lecture, I said, okay, what if the one person that you're considering sacrificing is your little brother? Okay, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's either saving your brother and sacrificing five people, strangers, or saving the five strangers but sacrifice your daughter, your little brother. What is it going to be for you? If you ask me the question, I will tell you right now, I'm going to save my little brother. I'm going to save my relative. And this is the natural inclination in women, right? Prioritizing family. So if a woman does it, she should be doing the right thing. She's doing the right thing, sacrificing five people to save her child, little brother, whatever, relative. That'll be perfectly fine for her to do and for anybody, prioritizing family. So do you think that's fair? Do you think that's a good way of building institutions with that idea in mind and laws? Okay, so feminist ethics is definitely not impartial when it comes to family. Number three, care values expand our view of morality as it validates compassion, self-sacrifice, cooperation, etc. However, all these aspects of our moral life only gives feminist ethics an eclectic approach to ethics, but no real coherence. By eclectic, I mean, yes, we have a more nuanced way, a more high resolution way of understanding, approaching, assessing moral actions. It's true, right? We have more access to more information. But we have that, but we don't have a coherent system or set of principles that help us determine objectively, reliably, and in a way that is satisfactory for most people, for all, what is right and what is wrong. Because if I'm saving my, let's say, or helping my family member, and in the process I'm sacrificing other people, not giving them the position or whatever the case is, okay, then those people are going to be very, very unhappy, and they're going to feel outraged, and they're going to feel like what I'm doing is not fair, it's not right, it's immoral. But hey, I'm justified, right? Um, I'm giving the benefit to my family member. That's something we addressed already in the previous point. But but you see, it's not going to have everybody happy, and there's no way to produce, in my estimation, okay, this is opinion, I have to say, there is no way for feminist philosophers to come up with a set of principles that help us, okay, this is what you do in this situation, and everybody else agreeing and saying, yeah, that's true, that's good, that's a good way of get a good solution. And this is how you deal in this other situation. This is what we can consider right, what we can consider wrong. It's I have not found any of that in the feminist philosophy literature. Yes, they keep emphasizing the issue of inequalities, of women being disadvantaged, gender, um, privacy, emotional abuse, etc., etc. They keep addressing these issues, but they're not proposing any solution, a solution that works, and that works for most of us. So so yeah, it's a problem. Yeah, we got a more high resolution way of looking at things, but what do we do with that? Okay, I have one more thing to say to finish this video. I know this video is too long already, right? So one more slide. Here we go. Okay, friends, I want to finish this video with, I want to offer you a different perspective, a different approach to all these issues that feminist philosophers have made us aware of, legitimate issues, I have to say. And I want to offer you a different approach or perspective and a way of dealing with them. Okay? So, but first, I want to start with offering you a contrast comparison of between these two things, social justice and feminist ethics. I think these two things are, in 2 points at least, they're fundamentally the same thing, feminist ethics and social justice. And okay, I want to start with that. First, like feminist ethics, social justice prioritizes the particular over the general. The particular over the general. What does that mean? It means feminist ethics does not approach justice or morality this way. What A did to B, they don't see it that way. They don't approach it that way. They see more details, more nuance, right? So they approach it more this way. What a man did to a woman, or vice versa, what a woman did to a man, or what a white person did to a black person, what an immigrant did to a national, what a rich person did to a poor person. And that's how they see issues, right? Both people in the feminist camp and people in the social justice camp. And also, like feminist ethics, social justice is motivated by compassion, right? Compassion is a huge thing in social justice and feminist ethics. So, okay, so they have these two things in common, and perhaps those things that they don't have in common is what makes them different from one another. But okay, in these 2 points, they are, I would say, in agreement. Now, how is this different from our traditional understanding of justice? Traditional, okay? And I'm going to use now justice with a capital J to mean, what we normally understand by justice, the conception of justice we have used to build our laws and our governments and our institutions. Okay. Our traditional idea of justice is quite indifferent to feelings or compassion. Justice does not care about A's name, race, gender, economic status, nationality, religion, political orientation. It doesn't matter from the perspective of justice. If A harms B, the action is wrong and must be punishable. Of course, we have to detail what kind of action. But see it as something like this. If A takes from B without B's permission, that is wrong. That is wrong. It doesn't matter who is A, if it's rich, poor, black, white, gay, straight. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If a person takes from another person without the second person's permission, okay, that is wrong. This has been the traditional male conception of justice, right? That we've been relying on for centuries. And that's how it's different from the feminist ethics and social justice. Now, this traditional conception of justice has worked, in my estimation. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. But I think it has done a pretty good job. We have the society and the institutions we do because of our relying on this understanding of justice, abstracting the action, which is why I'm using letters instead of names, right? We want to see simply individuals and how they interact and their actions, and that's what we want to judge, the actions from one individual to another. Okay, and again, social justice and feminist ethics, they see more nuance, skin color, ethnicity, nationality, and that sort of thing. My contention is this is a much better way of dealing with justice, because when you start incorporating care values into the system, and when you start being compassionate, right, in your determination of what's right and wrong and what's a crime and what's not a crime, okay, then things get really complicated. I think you saw that already in my presentation here. But let's think of concrete examples. In California, there are two important cities, LA and San Francisco. And in these two cities, for many years now, political leaders, they have been they have become more compassionate in their approach to justice, to crime, more compassionate. They started paying attention to all these aspects, all these features in people's life: race, nationality, sexual orientation. And what has happened as a consequence, it has really complicated the issue of justice. And this is an example. Okay, this is an example. I've heard politicians from California saying this kind of things. Actually, when they look at the prison population, okay, the criminals in prison, when they see that a majority of them, let's say 70% of them, are non-whites, okay, they see that as a problem. They think, okay, it's not fair. Only 30% or less than 30% of the people in prison are white. The other ones are not white. So that's not fair. There's an obvious injustice committed there. Okay? So they're not seeing A's and B's and C's. Okay? They're not seeing that. They're seeing skin color. Okay? So and based on that analysis, they think, okay, well, there are way too many non-whites in prison. So that's not right, and we have to address that. How? Well, we have to be more compassionate with non-whites. So when non-whites commit crimes like shoplifting, well, in California, authorities see that and they go like, okay, well, it's just a shoplifting, so we're gonna give these people a break. And because that's been the attitude in the last years, then shoplifting is a huge problem in California. I think you know what I'm saying. I mean, you can find many videos online of the kind of vandalism and shoplifting, crazy shoplifting going on in San Francisco and in Los Angeles. And actually many companies, they're moving out of California because there's no way of making money there with all the vandalizing and stealing and shoplifting. And you go to a pharmacy, right, and everything is behind bars. Like you want to buy a soap and you have to ask for somebody who works there in the store to open the gate, and so you can grab the soap or the shampoo that you want to buy. Recently, I heard somebody making a comment. He said it's ironic how in California products are behind bars and not shoplifters. Okay, um, just leaving it there. But they're having serious problems, and it's a fact. Okay, this is fact. Many people have moved out of California and they continue doing it because it's not safe. So, okay, I want you to see that's the issue with being compassionate in your orientation and in your approach to justice and morality. You see how problematic it is. And if you incorporate it, you make it part of the system or part of the legal analysis, okay, everybody is going to suffer, everybody. You're not going to make the society better, but worse for everyone. There'll be more criminals out there because we're not looking again at people in this abstract way, A's, B's, C's, and so on. So okay, that's not good. Okay, so what is the proposed solution? You might be thinking. Okay, if that's not going to work, incorporating care values and being compassionate in our laws, in our institutions, if that's not going to work, what's going to work? And here's my proposed solution. These issues feminist philosophers have addressed: emotional abuse, neglect, violations of trust. If you're aware of an instance of one of these wrongs, then you do something about it. You, viewer. That's right. Take matters into your own hands. So if, let's say, if that neglectful parent, that parent who is not reading and doing homework with her child, if that is your relative, your cousin, or your uh, whatever, if that's somebody you know, a friend, well, let her know. Talk to her and say, hey, friend, your child is suffering in school, is really struggling in school. Why don't you spend more time doing homework with your child and reading with your child? You do it. You do it. So if this guy who lies about his income, if that guy is your brother, talk to him. Say, hey, brother, what you're doing is not right. And if your brother does not care, if he laughs at you, okay, try to talk to the woman he's dating and say, hey, I want to warn you, my brother, he's a liar. He says he's making a lot of money. He's not true. You do something, and so on. All these issues that you see, all these problems, these violations of trust, this emotional abuse that you see, that you witness, okay, then you do something. Now, you know why perhaps you don't think this is a good idea? Perhaps because it means getting involved, and people don't want to do that. No, people think, no, that's none of my business. Oh, none of your business now? What happened to caring, to being caring and being compassionate? So you see something wrong going on, somebody being deceived, taken advantage of, or someone being neglected, a child, you're not going to do anything because it's none of your business? Really? Really? And that's compassionate. Of course, you don't want to get involved, but you know what you do want? You want somebody else to do something about it, right? You want the government to address those issues. So we have to change the system and our institutions and our laws. Yes, somebody must do something, but not me. Not me. How convenient, how hypocritical, how cowardly. How cowardly. I'm not saying that's you, but I want you to see at least the insight I'm trying to provide here and the perspective I'm offering. Are you really mindful of people at the bottom, people struggling? What are you doing for them? What are you doing? You're so concerned about the poor. Are you feeding anybody, like any poor person? Um, do you have any somebody who is poor or a homeless person. I mean, if you don't have the means to support a poor person or a homeless person, okay, how about you give them a place, a space in your house? You probably can do that. I'm sure you can, but you don't want to do that. No, you don't want. You want somebody else to handle this situation, right? You want your politicians to take from the rich and give to the poor, right? And that sort of thing. But you don't want to move a finger. You don't want to get involved. Of course not. Where's the compassion? Where is the care? Okay, so much, right, for care and compassion. So that's it, friends. That's my proposed solution. Yes, yes, those are real issues, real issues. Emotional abuse, violations of trust, that is wrong. Okay, fine. Do something about it. Because I'm telling you, I give that advice to myself all the time. All the time. I'm not claiming to be a saint. I'm not. But I help when I can, and I feel the responsibility, and I hope you do too. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. See you next time.